everyone, today I wanted to show you how to make salt dough because I'm going to give you an activity to do later in the video to make some neat little sculptures. So the ingredients you'll need are salt, flour, and water. You'll need a 1/4 cup of salt and water and 1/2 cup of flour. So first I'm going to start by adding a 1/4 cup of salt to a sort of small medium-ish bowl. Next, I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of flour. After you've got the flour in there, just mix the salt and flour together really well with a fork. Alright, when you've mixed your salt and flour well together, you're just going to get the 1/4 cup of water and slowly add it into your mixture. Don't dump it all in because you kind of want to slowly build up that desired texture of dough. When the dough finally starts to form, you can just start mixing it together with your hands. You want the dough to kind of have more of a smooth texture. You don't want it to be too floury or too sticky either. So I'm just really trying to get all of the flour that's inside of the bowl and knead it into my dough mixture so that I can try to get it the right consistency. I noticed that my dough was a little bit too floury, so I'm just going to add a little bit of water to kind of smooth it out a little bit. Here's what the dough looks like when it's more sticky instead of kind of like that smooth dough consistency. So when this happens, you can just add a little bit more flour and knead the dough again to kind of so that it won't be sticky anymore. Alright, when the dough is at the right consistency, what you do next is you just lay some flour down on top of your counter and just knead the dough for like a few more minutes just so that it's more of a smooth consistency, and also to get rid of any air bubbles that might have formed when you were getting your dough to the right consistency. You'll see why this is important later. Alright, so there's a few different ways that you can color your dough. The main way I was going to show you is after you've made your design and bake it, but the first way, before you even bake the dough, is you can use food coloring. This is if you don't have like any acrylic paint or watercolor and you want to have some sort of color to your little sculpture that you're going to make. So I'm just going to add 1 drop of food coloring and then knead it into the dough until it starts to turn green. And I'm just going to add 1 more drop of green because it's not to the green of my liking, so you can just slowly kind of build up this color with the food coloring until you get your desired color. For today's tutorial, I thought it would be interesting to recreate something that you've lost. So I challenge you to reflect on something you've lost. Maybe it was a pet, a piece of jewelry, or clothing. I'll give you a couple different examples of my own to show you the ability of the dough. So I thought a lot about things that I had lost that I was really attached to. The first being a leather jacket that I wore like all the time in high school. I specifically remember the day I lost it because it was the day that I took the ACT, and after I was done taking the test, I had left my jacket on the chair in the classroom, and I never saw it again after that, so I decided to recreate that. So what I'm doing is just rolling out a slab with the dough with just a rolling pin, just kind of getting it to a sort of thin consistency. You just kind of want to think about when you're making like sugar cookies and you don't want it too thin or too thick because there's a possibility that it could puff up when you put it in the oven. so it's best to shoot for something a little more thin. So what I'm going to do now, just to get that, is just cut out that jacket shape with a butter knife. As I mentioned before, this is similar to like when you're making sugar cookies. If you've done that before, it's easy just to make like little rolled out coils and just add them on top to decorate whatever you decide to recreate that you've lost. You can also easily add texture to your little sculpture with a toothpick. To show you a more sculptural technique with the dough, I decided to create my childhood pet hamster. My hamster disappeared one day after I had left the cage open when I was younger. I have a theory that it could have been one of those things parents pull and say that it ran away, or there could just be a long lost hamster corpse in my basement after all these years. I really don't know. So I'm just doing the same kind of technique that I was when I was making the jacket, just like pinching and molding little pieces of clay to get that desired shape that I want, and just adding them right on top to my little hamster to give him some ears and some eyes. Once again, I'm using a toothpick to kind of add some hair texture so that he looks like more furry. If you're done creating with the dough and have any left over, you can just take a piece of saran wrap and put them right in there, and you could just leave the dough in the fridge for up to 5 days. That's kind of like about as long as it'll stay good. Alright, now that I am done recreating some lost objects from my past, I'm going to take just a cookie sheet, and I laid a piece of parchment paper on top of it just in case. So I'm just going to set them right on top of there, and I have preheated my oven to 250 degrees, and I'm just going to put these guys in there for an hour because that should be long enough to harden them. I also just quickly cut out a heart shape from the green dough just so you can see what it looks like after it's baked. Alright, and here is what they look like after they've been baked. I just put them in the oven on 250 degrees Fahrenheit for like about an hour, so they just turn kind of like rock hard. Yeah, so now that they're baked, you can paint them, and I find that acrylic paint works the best, but you can also use like a really opaque watercolor if you wanted to. Go in with some black acrylic paint to kind of paint the eyes of this little hamster right here, just so you could see what that looks like. And there you can see it turns out pretty opaque. And there we go, he's got some little eyeballs. Alright, now I'm going to show you kind of what the watercolor looks like on top of this cooked salt dough. I'm just going to add like some brown color for his fur. It's definitely more transparent than the acrylic paint, but it still adds like a nice little color feature to your little sculpture if you don't have any acrylic paint. And because it's baked, it shouldn't hurt the dough in any way or make it softened again. So there's what it looks like. Let's cut out like a simple heart shape from the green colored dough that I made with the food coloring, just to show you what that looks like if you don't have any paint and you still want to like add some color to your sculpture. The one thing I will say though is that if you're rolling like something if you're rolling something flat like these were, make sure you like knead the dough beforehand to make sure there isn't any air bubbles, because this little heart had an air bubble and it caused it to puff up. And the same kind of happened with the hamster. There's like a hole at the bottom, but I think it was also because it was really thick, so just keep that in mind when you're making something more sculptural like this or something really flat and thin. Here's what it looks like all finished and painted. I hope you guys liked this and are inspired to try it yourself. Thank you!